Well, it is a tremendous honor and pleasure to be here with you today. I talked to the group before over lunch, and I described myself as a leader in training because I'm not there yet. And I'm going to share with you today kind of some case studies from my own experience as executive director of the West Michigan Center for Arts and Technology, and the things that we're still learning, the things that we're looking forward to learning about, and how we're really moving forward in the future. So I'm going to really use personal experience and our organization as an example. So the subject of today's talk is really about all of these sectors that have been working together. So I serve the community as a nonprofit executive, but I work with CEOs, leaders of neighborhood organizations, the mayor. I am crossing sectors all day long. And we are seeing tremendous strides and trends. The trend is only moving towards public-private partnerships. And get used to being annoyed by this word being overused because it is here to stay. It is the new norm. So nonprofits have been getting into the business game. Nonprofits trying to run like a business has been really a key buzz term. Businesses getting into the nonprofit game. And in fact, the water that I'm drinking right now is just that. It's a business getting into the social benefit game. In fact, it says boxed water is better. It's trying to teach us a little bit of a lesson and propel us into changing our behaviors and then also buying their product and helping that business make money. And then both of those sectors, the nonprofit and the business sector, are really engaged in civic life. That's everything from how our government is run to how our students are taught in schools. So right now, more than ever, this public-private partnership is around. And at WMCAT, we have a lot of experience working there. Some good experiences and some where we've learned some valuable lessons. So I want to talk about why this matters. It matters for us to build context together in this room. So as I share these experiences, I'm trying to help build context from the nonprofit perspective on what's worked in these relationships. And it matters too because public health, education, as I mentioned, the environment, the only way we're going to solve some of the major challenges and issues before us is if we work together on these things. Again, as cliche as it sounds, working together is really what it's all about. So not addressing these issues means that we will experience a burden on our own personal wallets. We will see things that we have liked about society change or go away. We will see the impact that it has on our families. We will see the impact that it has in our community around us and people that we don't know. So I want to provide some context before I delve into all of that fun stuff about who I am. And I am happily the daughter of a wonderful man from the UP who met a woman from Puerto Rico on the first day of college at Michigan State University. In fact, my father is here today. So Dad, raise your hand. As you can see, I have come from a very supportive family. My dad is still coming to hear me speak after all of these years and lots of speeches. So I kind of come from an interesting background, different sectors, and really that's kind of the theme of all of this, is crossing cultural lines and building context and helping us move forward. So how does a Yooper and a Puerto Rican come together to create three kids who have very diverse perspectives on how the world works? Well, I am happy to say that my parents did it pretty seamlessly. And they did it because they helped us to build context and create a common language. So my parents had me when they were quite young. So imagine two college students meeting each other from two totally different cultural backgrounds, having a child together, still wanting to go on to become a teacher, to become an attorney, and raise their daughter in the best way possible. So what they did is they brought my two grandmothers into my life to play an equal role in parenting me. So I would go up to the UP with my dad's mom, my Grandma Dee. I would go up to the UP with her for half of the summer, and she'd pick me up at the bridge in her Winnebago, and we'd hang out in the basement of VFW halls. I was trying to figure out how to play pool behind my back at the age of 5, and I learned how to speak that language. I learned how to exist in that context from a very early age. The other half of my summers, I would go to Puerto Rico or spend time with my grandma in Bloomfield Hills, my mom's mom, my abuela. And I would speak Spanish with her. I would spend time with her friends who would come over for tea, truly come over for tea. women who still wore hats and had their hair set every week. They were glamorous, they were beautiful, and it was a total different experience from being in bowling alleys in the UP. So as a child at a very young age, I had to learn how to flip the script and talk different languages no matter where I was. And also, because I was just a kid hanging out with a bunch of adults, I learned how to speak in lots of different ways. So it was a really helpful tool in my leadership development. And I'm extremely grateful that I had parents who saw that in me and didn't think that it was weird that they had a kid who could jump around from thing to thing and yeah, I'd rather hang out with the parents at the school carnival than hang out with the kids who are going into the haunted house. My parents thought that that was okay. And so they continued to encourage me, and that helped me to really find my voice at a young age as a leader. And again, I say leader, but I say little L leader, because I'm a leader in training and I'm still learning. But helping me to find my voice was really about me having this insatiable curiosity about why, in all of these different experiences that I would have, either between my grandmother in the UP being like, Grandma, why does that person ask me why my name is Luisa? And she says, well, because Luisa's kind of not a normal name up here. And, you know, he just doesn't know what he doesn't know. And I'm like, okay. And then asking my grandmother in the Detroit area, why is it so important for women to, you know, preserve their hairstyle for 7 days? I don't understand why you have to sleep with like a silk wrap on your head. She's like, well, because it's important, and this is why. So starting to ask those questions why, and even getting answers, helped to inform when I started asking questions about really tough stuff. When my dad was helping the Lansing community rename one of the streets Cesar Chavez Boulevard, I asked why that was important. And my dad introduced me to the people who he said, this is why this is important. Listen to their stories. And something that has really informed me in my leadership is, once you hear those answers, you can't go back. You can't unknow what you have learned. And I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility that once that person told me why it was important to rename Grand Avenue Cesar Chavez Boulevard, I had to do something with that information. Either learn more about it, change something about my behavior, engage in a new way, respect or listen to people differently. Those kinds of things really built this kind of why. Now that I know, I have to do something about it. So I started young, and I started with great parents, so I'm very, very happy. So as you can imagine, being a precocious child who has like a kind of a funky background, I just bounced around from different experiences and opportunities. And it landed me in the political sector when I was 19 years old. And I started as a campaign manager for Diane Byram, who was running for state representative. She was already an experienced politician, and she had a lot of words of wisdom to impart on me, and she was tough on me. And working in the political sector helped me to get tough, to get real, and abandon some of my idealism that I had already had, which was not necessarily a bad thing, but it really helped to inform and generate context for me. From that, I went to Florida, I went to Washington, D.C. I was really engaged in the political process. I was a political fundraiser. So as you can imagine, I was working with anyone from the person licking the envelopes back at headquarters that was going to ask someone for a $5 donation, to the person who we were trying to get to max out and give us all of their money 10 minutes later in an evening gown. So again, those interesting skills that I picked up as a kid were starting to pay off in a career that I had started out in. But I knew that there was something better, because I was still curious about, well, we're spending all this time licking envelopes and getting money from people, but no one's answering questions about why are there so many people protesting out of the campaign headquarters, or why don't people like you, or why don't people like the other candidate? They're like, we can't worry about that. We don't need to worry about social things. We're on a train going one way. And it didn't feel right. I knew that there was something more. And I had a lot of perceptions about the nonprofit community, so I didn't necessarily think that was a way I wanted to go, because I wanted to do bowling alley to ballroom on a daily basis in my life. But I came to a wedding here in Grand Rapids, and my friend, it was a great wedding. It was almost 8 years ago. And I met some people there who worked at Goodwill Industries at this wedding. And they said, you know, there's a job, I know you're living in Florida right now, but there's a job at Goodwill, and I think that you would like it because this is a nonprofit that runs a little bit differently than maybe what you're imagining a nonprofit is. They have a business arm, they have a philanthropy arm, and they have a programmatic service arm. So it could really, you could like that diversity within that organization. And they were right. I went in, I extended my stay. I went in for the interview, I got the job, and all of a sudden I was moving from Florida to Grand Rapids, Michigan. And here I have stayed. And I've stayed and seen this community change and grow. And I've seen all of these private partnerships kind of grow and help to improve our community. But there are ways that public-private partnerships can go wrong too. So even though they're oftentimes heralded as like the answer, we have to be really cognizant of what that means. So after some great experiences here, I found out about a place called WMCAT, which it wasn't just a place where it was like the new buzzword, but they were really doing stuff that was really innovative. So I landed the job as executive director at the age of 26 at the West Michigan Center for Arts and Technology, a new kind of upstart nonprofit organization that served two distinct populations: potential high school dropouts and un- or underemployed adults. And it was a boutique size because it wanted to be an organization that was nimble to change and innovate as things changed and innovate in the world of work, the world of technology, and the world of poverty. And it was started from corporate philanthropy, which also makes it an interesting combination of different sector involvement in serving others. So me, being a person with insatiable curiosity, said, all right, this is going to be a great opportunity, and cool things are going to happen out of this place. So almost 4 years ago, I started working at WMCAT. So here we go. Let's see. I've never done like a PowerPoint. Usually I'm PowerPoint averse. Not because I'm technology averse, but because PowerPoint just doesn't do it for me typically. So here's WMCAT. It's pretty gorgeous. WMCAT, as I said, grew out of corporate philanthropy, and it was a place that those corporate donors and founders said, place matters. The way something looks matters. The way an environment makes someone feel matters. So take that same principle about the way a place makes someone feel matter, and then think about a human-to-human interaction. The way someone makes me feel also matters. And those are two things that WMCAT embraces. And in how we serve people, we serve cutie pies like this, youth. We serve approximately 300 urban youth in Kentwood and Grand Rapids, and arts and technology after-school programming, and then also some day programming as well. These are students who might not have a marching band at their high school because it's been cut. They might not have a place where they can recreate and have a good time and be themselves. School might not be the same experience that we've experienced school in. But at WMCAT, it's a place where they're instantly respected. They come in, they take cool classes like digital photography, digital video, and in this case, it's fiber arts and sewing, and they made those cool winter hats. And then I got another cool picture. Yeah, this is Dennis, one of our amazing instructors, and two of our students in the photography studio. And when you respect students, you give them state-of-the-art equipment, you make the environment fun, you see amazing results. You see students who are happy, who maybe don't have a great deal of things to be happy about in their daily lives as a child in poverty. And they're award-winning photographers, they're award-winning skateboard designers because we have a skateboard design class. We keep it fresh, we keep it interesting. And we see them graduate from high school, go on to college. We also serve a small cohort of un- or underemployed adults. These are individuals anywhere from someone who worked for 40 years on the line at GM, and when it closed down in Wyoming, they maybe lost hope in addition to losing their job. It could be a person who is 2 generations on public assistance who just really hasn't had a vision for what was possible for themselves. But they come into WMCAT 30 at a time, 24 or 30 at a time, to learn how to be medical coders, pharmacy technicians, and medical billers. And we do an extensive, in-depth associate's degree level training with them that takes them from someone who maybe didn't have hope to someone who's now earning a living wage of $14 an hour and has now demonstrated to their kids, hey, I walked across that stage with a cap and gown and you can too. These kinds of programs change communities. So we do cool stuff at WMCAT, but it's not good enough. So even though we're seeing our students graduate from high school, some of them going on to community college, there's more that we can do. So WMCAT keeps itself innovative and limber to be able to change with what's happening. And one of the things that allows us to be innovative is that we want to partner with people. We want to partner with businesses, nonprofit organizations, the local government. We had the privilege of working with Old Orchard Juice this last summer in a public-private partnership. And the way that it was public is because the public got to experience it, so maybe not public sector. But Old Orchard Juice has been a partner of ours for the past couple of years, or they've been a place where we buy juice for the past couple of years. And little by little, we've been learning more about their philosophy, and they've been learning about ours. And it ultimately led into us having our students, our graphic design students, design a label for a special edition juice that would be sold during Art Prize. What's even more cool about it is that one student's design was selected, placed on the outside wrap of juice, and sold in Meijer and Spartan stores, with every dollar from each bottle sold coming back to WMCAT to feed back into our youth program. So that's kind of the surface area thing about what's cool, but the mission-focused reason about why that's cool is our students got to see who a graphic designer looks like. The professions that our students see maybe on a daily basis are teacher, doctor, police officer, storekeeper, crossing guard, maybe if there's a crossing guard. But through this project, they got to go check out how juice is made up in Sparta. They got to meet a person who is part of the public relations aspect of making juice. It helped to fuel students to ask questions when they walk into a grocery store like, man, I wonder who the people are who make these products. It created a new curiosity because it provided a new context. And the reason why I feel that WMCAT has been successful in these kinds of partnerships is because of three key things that are a part of it when it works. When it works well, it's because these things are a part of it. It's that shared values have been established, we've provided context for the relationship, and we've co-created language to engage with each other. So when those things happen, we can see a WMCAT's design on a juice label in a Meijer store, like a big, huge display at Meijer. I mean, like, whoa, that's so cool. So when we have those three components, it works. But when we don't have some of those components, it doesn't necessarily work. So to go a little bit into what I mean about shared values. At WMCAT, we have a lot of values. Sometimes we have values that we don't even know we have until something challenges those values. But some of the values that we have is open communication, commitment to inclusion and diversity, health and environmental stewardship, and putting people in our community first. Those are really some major guiding principles that we have at this organization. And we have had countless banks want to partner with our organization to do financial literacy with our students. But we want to first find out, is that a bank that has diversity and inclusion as one of their primary principles and values as a bank? Because I'm a little reluctant to bring you into our classroom to teach financial literacy if you don't embrace diversity and community principles first. So it immediately shuts the gates about what's possible. So we really count on the business sector to start embracing a lot of these same values so that we can help our students to become financially literate. So those are areas where we've seen a lot of possibility, but a lot of improvement, and the need for a two-way street communication with the business sector, elevating the importance of diversity. Here's an example of when I have applied my own personal values and it hasn't worked. One of my really diehard things is local businesses first. And sometimes we don't think about partners in our programs as people who don't know that they're partnering with us. And to elaborate on what I mean by that is, sometimes if you're taking a group of 40 inner city kids to a restaurant in Gaylord, Michigan, that restaurant is an equal partner in that student's dining experience, as is WMCAT. We went on a trip to the UP last year, not because I love the UP, but because there's a college up there and we went on a college trip during spring break. But I didn't think about the fact that going to a restaurant in the middle of nowhere that has a lot of taxidermy, I didn't think about what that effect would have on our students. I didn't think about what the nature of that cuisine would have on our students. And I didn't think of BJ's Restaurant as a partner in what's WMCAT's programmatic offerings. But anywhere where we take our students and we provide them with experiences that we think have value, we need to make sure that the person on the other end who's providing the service shares those same values. And when we pulled into the parking lot, because I was like, we gotta do local first, guys. We gotta go to this restaurant in Gaylord, you know, no Subway sandwiches for our kids. We pulled into the parking lot. There's a big Miller Lite banner. There are some trucks that have interesting things hanging from the back of their tailpipe and Confederate flags. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what have we done? These people are not interested in sharing values, potentially, with our students. And when we went in there, it was like the record scratched with our students. The waitresses maybe didn't really know what to do about this huge busload of kids that walked in the door. There was taxidermy everywhere that made our students feel really uncomfortable. And the food was not labeled in the buffet, so they were eating everything from fried frog legs to an interesting meat. Needless to say, it didn't end well. Our students ended up getting sick from the food. They felt uncomfortable. Some of our students were vegetarians, and the taxidermy and the extensive meat collection at the counter was like, whoa, we didn't think of BJ's as a partner in this experience, and we really should have. We should have really thought those things out. And when I mean we, I mean I, because I was quickly reminded by the WMCAT team that, Luisa, we always go local first, but next time we're doing Subway. And they were totally right. I applied my own values so hard that I wasn't thinking about the context and what would happen in that type of experience. And the good news is, all of those students still really love WMCAT and still had a great time on that trip. So even though we went there and the food was not so good. So another thing is providing context. It's about sharing those experiences. Before we went into BJ's, I didn't provide context about what an up north snowmobile pull-in bar is going to be like for our students. Typically, before you enter in a partnership or you have a key programmatic element, you want to develop context on both sides so people can interact together and respect each other's point of view. One example is, I had a friend introduce her husband to me recently, and she said, "This is my husband, Gary. He's a 6 Sigma black belt." And I was like, okay, like karate? Is this? I had no context for understanding that the fact that Gary had just graduated with his 6 Sigma black belt was a notable achievement for him. And I was like, that's really cool. Like, do you hang out in the dojo? I had no context. And so it kind of it didn't get my relationship with Gary off to a bad start. Gary was cool and understood that I didn't have context from my nonprofit, my nonprofit sector for understanding the importance of what he had just experienced and been awarded was. So there's language and there's context in every sector and industry. And we need to be able to respect the context and the expertise that's valued in each of these sectors. Another one that we're seeing happen a lot, and it's been featured in the media, is teachers. There might not be a lot of understanding of teachers in this world today because there might be one sector that's applying what they believe context is to what's valued there. But to go through a variety of trainings and to be a person who's a kindergarten teacher in a room of 30 kids, that takes skill and ability. But it might not be the kind of skill and ability that a different sector measures or knows how to measure. So the application of different measurements is happening across sectors. But what I'm really advocating for, and what we advocate for at WMCAT, is to respect the skills and abilities of the different sectors and the context and expertise that they each bring. So just as I learned about 6 Sigma black belts being like a really big deal in business and not knowing that, so goes the business community's need to understand what it's like to be in front of a group of 30 inner city kids, half of whom don't have textbooks. You have a master's degree and you're still able to see most of them go off to college and what that kind of achievement and accomplishment is like. And then the last thing that we've seen that really works at WMCAT is when we create language together. So all of those different sectors, they've got their different hierarchies and they've got the different things that they value, but when you go into a project, you might have different definitions of words than they do going into it. For instance, we can think on a daily basis of the word natural. It's been put all over products, but what does natural really mean? It means different things to different sectors. So going into a project, it's really important to co-create language about what terms are going to represent and mean. There are some terms that trigger a nonprofit executive to get them motivated, or it triggers them to make them upset and again, build that wall up so that the partnerships and collaborations really can't take place. I know a lot of times there are triggers, again, as an executive director, you cross sectors all the time. And I know one of the things that happens is that triggers me is when someone says, you need to run your nonprofit like a business. And the thing is, nonprofits are different than businesses. Nonprofits serve people. And sometimes the outcomes can't necessarily be measured in the exact same way that a cog getting added to another cog creates such a said product. But what can be measured in nonprofit are a whole different unique set of things and values that maybe could help benefit the business community as well. So we need to co-create together language and context about what we define as success, what we consider growth to be, what we consider the landscape of everything that we do. So once you've really created that vocabulary together, then you can really move forward in understanding and make some cool things happen. One thing that has really changed over the years is how we refer to inner city kids. The evolution of language on how we refer to those kids has gone from potential juvenile delinquents, at-risk kids. You've heard me refer to them as urban youth, because it's really hard to place a value assessment or judgment on what at-risk means or potential juvenile delinquents. But right now, some exciting things are happening in the different sectors. We're agreeing on what that language is going to be and what those opportunities and possibilities are going to be for those youth. So we have traditionally measured it against a stick of like, well, we're keeping them out of jail, or we're keeping them off the streets. Now we're elevating the conversation by different sectors working together to co-create what success and language is going to be. So to kind of recap what I've gone over, cross-sector collaborations are here to stay. WMCAT's a place where we're kind of a hotbed of innovation for trying these things out. Sometimes they work out really well. Sometimes the joke's on me and taking our kids to BJ's up in Gaylord. But if we want to seize what all of those cool opportunities are that the business community or the government or schools, what those opportunities and or lack of resources, there are ways that we can match them all up. But the only way we're going to be able to match them up, from my perspective and what we've learned at WMCAT as a small example, is by establishing some shared or common values, providing context for the relationship to exist and respecting where the different sectors are coming from, and then co-creating a shared language. I talked a little bit about at the lunch with the fellows that even amongst the fellows there is a culture and a language. So that way you guys are able to co-create an experience of what it's like to be a fellow. You're able to do cool things together because you've co-created a culture and experience, and we really find that valuable at WMCAT in our experiences. And I want to leave you with a story about what's possible. And it's a WMCAT story, which I love telling WMCAT stories. And it goes back to that trip to the UP that we took. Again, I'm not partial to the UP just because half of my family is from there, but I'm partial to the UP because of a lot of reasons. The education entities that are there, as well as the vast beauty that is awesome, can show our youth. So we took this trip, and on our way up to the UP, I'm at the front of the bus playing tour director and talking about like the history of Michigan, trying to provide context about what's on the other side of that bridge. Because in order for our students to have a good experience, they needed to know what was going to be on the other side of that bridge. So I'm up at the front, and I'm talking, and I'm like, oh, and right now we're about to go over the crest, right before we hit the Mackinac Bridge. And a student says, what's that thing? As soon as we see the Mackinac Bridge. And I'm like, well, that is the mighty Mac. And I'm like super excited to tell all the information that I know about the Mackinac Bridge. He's like, yeah, I know what a bridge looks like, Miss Louie, so what's the blue stuff? What is that? And then another kid says, whoa, it's just like TV. It looks like an ocean. It's like, okay, Raise of hands, how many of you have been to one of the Great Lakes? Not that many kids out of 40 raised their hands. In fact, not many of our kids had never been on a bus ride as long as the bus ride was to Mackinac City. And it shocked me. It shocked me, and it's been something that's been really impactful to me ever since. What's even cooler about that, and explains what's really possible, is that the kids loved what they saw. The bridge was a little bit scary, because it's kind of a scary bridge. I'm scared of going across the bridge. But the kids loved what they saw. And when we got to Marquette and they saw Lake Superior and these big kind of like glacial ice cubes in it, they wanted to take pictures of it. In fact, we went to Lake Superior twice. The first time because we had planned it, the second time because they wanted to see more. They were inspired by what they saw. They saw something they've never seen before. What they saw informed their decisions. It provided context. It opened doors to answers. It opened doors to more creativity and innovation and ideas and like, whoa, if this is what Michigan is, whoa. And coming back to Grand Rapids, it might have changed their perspective on how they view the park. So I thought about this. I was like, you know, I guess if you haven't seen Lake Michigan, maybe the Grand River wouldn't be as inspiring to you. But I look at the Grand River and I think it's inspiring because it's something that goes through our city that feeds into something amazing. And I see it as something that is like the lifeblood of our state. All of this water is important. So maybe our students will have a little bit of a different respect when they go and see the river. They're like, you know what? I saw something that's bigger than this, but this makes me like this park even more than I did before. And it might change the way they feel about their community. Those kinds of things and decisions and building context informs their decision making and informs them to be leaders moving forward. So I feel very strongly, I'm going to open it up to questions, but I feel really strongly that we can solve all of these big deal mountain challenges that are before us if we really approach it from the standpoint of providing context and sharing language and having it happen in a culture of respect of where everyone is coming from. So the cross sector thing is not bad. No one sector has it right, but together we can put something together that really does feel right.